Okay, here we go.
I would like everyone to close their eyes for a moment. Don't peek. Alright. Imagine that you are taken from everything you know, stripped of everything from the outside world, and locked up in a tiny claustrophobic cage with a complete stranger. You have no privacy, nor are you allowed anything but the necessities of life, like hygienic products or food. The days feel long, but the nights feel even longer, especially since you are not allowed a single moment to yourself. And those keeping watch over you maintain a negative and hostile disposition. Now, with your eyes still closed, imagine that you've been finally set free to go on with your life after years of having nothing. You've been branded by the place you left. You have not a single skill to offer in a world where how useful you are dictates whether or not you will survive. You may open your eyes now. Sounds difficult, doesn't it? Well, this is the reality of many people who have been incarcerated in America, and especially for Black and Brown Americans who, according to Dr. Nellis of the Sentencing Project, are 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than any other group. Today, I will be establishing the issues of the American prison system, how they relate to modern day slavery, and how we can move forward towards a more rehabilitation centered um, way of prison. Let's establish a few facts about our current prison system. The first being that the imprisoned person has been historically described as a slave to the state. And this terminology was used in the 1871 um, Ruffin versus Commonwealth, a, a case in which the Virginia Supreme Court decided that enslaved or incarcerated people are under the jurisdiction of the state, and the state is allowed to say what rights they do and do not have. Moving forward, this was overturned in the 1971 case, Wolf versus McDonough, where they are allowed to have a few more rights. However, I believe that the original sentiment has created a precedent in how imprisoned people are seen by the US government. All of this was found in the Cornell database for different laws and amendments and things like that. Then, with the revision of the 13th Amendment, came a clause that says that people are safe from enslavement and indentured servitude. However, incarcerated people were taken out of this clause. So I believe that that kind of shows how America views the prison system. Further, what little rights that incarcerated people have are constantly infringed upon. So, say that prisoners have their first right, First Amendment rights, which is freedom of speech. However, they're not completely protected from cruel and unusual punishment. So while they can send and receive mail, they're not allowed to completely be able to protest without being punished. So I believe this shows that the incarcerated person has a similar experience as someone who would have been a slave back before the 13th Amendment. So on November 2nd, the UN's International Tribunal of Human Rights found the U.S. guilty of 5 accounts of genocide against Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. One of those 5 accounts was mass incarceration. It hasn't been you can't find much in the media about what happened. Luckily, some newspapers, like the San Francisco Daily newspaper, reported on it. And basically, they brought up a 70-year-old petition written by W.E.B. Du Bois and Malcolm X that basically were these thought accounts of genocide, asking for America to revise this in some way. So, like I said before, black, brown, and indigenous people are 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than any other group. And then on top of that, in terms of death row, you can't, with all this in mind, you can think of death row as a sort of lynching, especially seen as its contribution to the disenfranchisement of black and brown bodies. Um, so according to the Equal Justice Initiative, um, so for instance, in the South, despite black people only making up 30% of the population, 74% of people on death row are black. So they are more likely to be, not only are they more likely to be incarcerated, but they're more likely to be put to death, no matter what they've done, if it's true or not. So how can we solve this? Well, the issue of racial bias is something that we cannot fix without completely overturning America's system overall. However, I would like to focus on some more specific parts of the system of prison, which is I would like to move towards a more restorative justice. So making prison a place of rehabilitation, not allowing slave labor, since many private prisons use slave labor from the incarcerated people to create goods, and give prisoners better environments to be able to live. So if you need help imagining what this would probably look like, look no further than Norway. In Norway's housing prison, they kind of emphasize normalcy. So they do not have bars on their windows. They have a fully stocked kitchen with real utensils. And the prisoners are allowed to go to different vocational workshops like woodworking, um, assembly workshop, and they even have a recording studio for people who at once played instruments. And this is for anyone, no matter what crime you've committed. Um, Even if you murder someone, they allow you to be in such a nice place like this because they believe that rehabilitation is the best way to deal with prison. So with all this said, when you compare Norway to the American prison system, according to Christina Sturgeon, who studied the Norway versus United States, America has a very high rate of reoffense, 70%, which is very high compared to Norway. And I believe that is because we do not have that system of rehabilitation. Prisons are not made in our country to help the people that are inside it. So, in summation, we discussed how the U.S. prison system is akin to modern day slavery. We talked about how to move away from that, and we even compared our prison system to Norway's prison system. And while this may seem very difficult, there are a few things that I listed that we can do. So the first is educating your friends. It's not very much known about our prison system. While there are articles out there, it's not something that we really talk about much, and I feel like education is extremely important. You can also write to the congresswoman or whoever represents you in your state. The next slide has a QR code with a list of people who represent you in your state. Write to them asking them to amend the 13th Amendment, saying that prisoners should be included in the protection from involuntary servitude and slavery. And then as well, I've also included a QR code where you can go to the Equal Justice Initiative that I've talked about before, and continue to educate yourself because this topic is ever expanding and changing. And then also volunteering. There are many organizations in the U.S. that allows college students and people in general to go in and help educate incarcerated people. Our school unfortunately doesn't have one, but I'm sure if enough people sparked interest, we could probably make one here at Pepperdine. So I just want to leave off with a quote, and it is only after slavery, prison,